So I farm so hard the employees wanna find me, and then wanna hire me. What's 100K to a guy like me? Could you please remind me? Farm so hard, this ain't easy. Working late nights, you best believe me. My grades can only go A's. Never wanna see another B unless I'm Jay-Z. Farm so hard, let's get paid.
What's good, fam? It's your host, Jim Pruitt, aka 4MD in the ED. And today we have our new session called the 5-Minute Pharmacy Pearl. And what this is going to be is, as the name actually implies, you're going to get through a pharmacy pearl within 5 minutes, so you can listen to it on your way to work, on your way from work, and if you really don't have time to listen to, a 20 or 30 minute session. So let's jump right into it. Today we're going to talk about the single syringe administration of diluted adenosine. This has come up because a lot of people administer adenosine with different techniques, and there's been a lot of buzz about it on Twitter, and this has come up a few times within my ED, so I thought this would be a pretty good episode to record on. Regarding adenosine, traditionally it's going to be given for SVT or supraventricular tachycardia, which accounts for about 50,000 ED visits annually. And the mechanism of action of adenosine is going to be that it slows conduction at the AV node. However, with that is the fact that it's metabolized in the erythrocytes and vascular endothelial cells, giving it a half-life for about 10 seconds. But the success of adenosine depends on the administration technique as it does the mechanism of action. And the ACLS guidelines recommend that you give a 6 milligram IV push followed by 20 cc's of a saline flush. And then if that doesn't work, you follow up with a 12 milligram IV push, again with that same 20 cc flush behind it. Now there's a variation of techniques that can be used. There's this 2 flush technique as mentioned before. There's a stock clock technique where you can hook up your adenosine at one port and then hook up your flush at a separate one, and you push, turn the bevel, and push the flush right behind the adenosine to quickly get that going. There's led to the creation or the popularization of the single syringe diluted technique. And what that means is that you grab a 20 cc or a 30 cc syringe, you drop your adenosine and your saline in the same 20 or 30 cc syringe, and you administer all of it together as a single fast IV push, so you can get both of them together. Now there's some talk about this, whether the normal saline actually protects the adenosine from getting broken down by those erythrocytes, or whether it just helps it get there quickly. And then on the opposite side, people are saying is this even compatible? Does this limit the efficacy of it? And it doesn't. So adenosine is compatible with NS, and in previous trials before this one, it's been shown to be as or more effective than the techniques used before. And this can be given IV or even IO if you had to. What Mark and his team did out in Chicago with their study, it was a single center prospective observational trial. And they looked at the traditional techniques and compared that with the single syringe diluted adenosine technique. And what they found within their group was that successful conversion to normal sinus rhythm with the first dose was higher in that single syringe arm, with about 73% converting to sinus rhythm compared to 40.7% in the traditional group. And when looking at using up to 3 doses with that single syringe group, they found that 100% of their patients actually converted the normal sinus rhythm compared to the 70.4% of patients using that traditional technique. There was no adverse effects that they found in that single syringe diluted technique. So overall, in this, small observational trial that didn't meet their enrollment goal of 75 patients, they found that it was more effective, simpler, and they didn't find any adverse effects when given this diluted adenosine as a single IV push. But with all the commotion about this that's been out on social media in the foam community, when I reached out to Mark and asked him did he have any additional comments on the trial or the technique in general, he said he wished he would have prospectively evaluated how satisfied the nurses were with this technique due to how easy it was to do and not having to maneuver around with other objects. He also said he wished he would have looked at the amount of patients that presented multiple times in the study period and which technique they received initially and which technique they received on the 3rd and 4th try, because he noticed some patients showed up for their 3rd or 4th visits and was like, hey, look, just give me the single syringe technique. And they would ask for it by its name and say, just put all of it in one and give it that way, because the other times it didn't work as well. So shout out to Mark and his team for conducting that study, and shout out to you to listen to another episode of the Farm So Hard podcast.